The Dottie Rambo mystery finally solved and isn't good. Born Joyce Reba Luttrell on March 2, 1934, in Madisonville, Kentucky. Dottie Rambo would go on to become one of gospel music's most influential voices. From a young age, she felt called to write and sing songs about her faith, even when it meant leaving home at just 12 years old to pursue her dream. Despite facing poverty, rejection, and hardship, her determination never wavered. Over her lifetime, Dottie penned more than 2,500 gospel songs, many of which became standards in churches across America. With her unique voice, heartfelt lyrics, and unshakable belief in God, she gave generations of believers a soundtrack to their faith. Her songs weren't just music, they were ministry, born from a life of both pain and deep devotion. Dottie Rambo's humble beginnings. Dottie Rambo's career began not with fanfare, but with faith. At just 12 years old, she packed a small suitcase, slung a guitar over her shoulder, and left her Kentucky home to follow her divine calling. Traveling through the South, she played in tiny churches, revival tents, and radio stations, often sleeping in her car or on church pews. Her songs, raw, spiritual, and deeply personal, resonated with everyday people. By age 16, she had already written dozens of gospel hymns, drawing the attention of the Christian music community. It wasn't long before her songwriting talents led her to Nashville, where doors began to open. But even then, fame wasn't her goal. Ministry was. Those early years, filled with struggle and sacrifice, shaped her voice not just as a singer, but as a vessel for hope. Dottie's humble beginnings were the soil from which gospel greatness grew, the song that immortalized Dottie Rambo. For Dottie Rambo, the song that truly solidified her legacy was "He Looked Beyond My Fault and Saw My Need." Written during a time of deep personal reflection, the hymn became a gospel standard, recorded by artists such as Andre Crouch, the Oak Ridge Boys, and even Elvis Presley's Gospel Circle. The lyrics, poetic, humble, and soul-stirring, reflected Rambo's unshakable faith in grace and redemption. The melody, set to the tune of Danny Boy, made it familiar yet wholly spiritual. It wasn't just a hit, it was a healing balm for those struggling with shame, doubt, and unworthiness. With this song, Dottie Rambo wasn't just a gospel singer. She became a voice of compassion and spiritual clarity. The hymn continues to be sung in churches around the world, a timeless testament to the power of forgiveness and divine love. Through this masterpiece, Dottie Rambo gave the world more than music. She gave it mercy. The quiet struggles of Dottie Rambo. Despite her prolific songwriting and angelic voice, Dottie Rambo often found herself overlooked and undercompensated in an industry dominated by male voices and institutional gatekeeping. Though she penned over 2,500 songs, many of which became gospel staples, she was rarely given the financial reward or public credit that matched her immense contributions. Record labels reaped the benefits of her hits while Rambo, driven by ministry more than money, continued writing and touring, sometimes without proper royalties or even recognition. Her humility and focus on her faith made her vulnerable to exploitation. She wasn't one to demand contracts or pursue lawsuits. She poured her heart into the message rather than the money. But behind closed doors, it hurt. It was emotionally exhausting to see her work uplift thousands while her own family struggled financially. Dottie was never driven by fame, but the lack of fair compensation made it hard to support herself and those she loved. This pattern of quiet exploitation is a painful but all too common reality for many women in music, especially in the gospel world. Dottie Rambo's story reminds us that even spiritual giants can be undervalued, and that talent and integrity do not always guarantee justice. Her legacy lives on not only through her songs, but through the hard truths her life reveals. The hidden contracts that shaped Dottie Rambo's career. In the glittering yet often ruthless world of the music industry, Dottie Rambo's journey was marked not just by triumph, but by a haunting thread of betrayal, especially in the form of silent contracts made behind closed doors. While her voice was reaching millions and her songs were sung in churches across the nation, behind the scenes, her rights were being quietly signed away in deals she barely knew existed. As a young artist focused on her message and ministry, Dottie was more concerned with writing truth than reading fine print. She trusted those around her, managers, producers, and executives, believing they shared her values. But many saw her only as a vehicle for profit. Some of her most iconic works were bound by contracts that gave away publishing rights, royalties, and credit without her full understanding or fair negotiation. These shadow deals often left her with only a fraction of the earnings her talent had generated. Years later, she would speak candidly about the pain of realizing how much of her catalog was legally out of her hands. Songs that she had poured her soul into, such as "We Shall Behold Him" and "He Looked Beyond My Fault," were making others wealthy while she lived modestly. Yet she never grew bitter. Instead, she used her experience to warn and guide younger gospel artists, especially women, about the importance of knowing your worth and protecting your creations. The industry failed Dottie Rambo in many ways, but she remained grounded in her faith and artistry. Her resilience in the face of exploitation is as much a part of her legacy as her music. Those dark contracts may have tried to silence her ownership, but her voice, spiritual, unshakable, and true, continued to rise above it all. Dottie Rambo's brave stand and the backlash that followed, at a point when most artists might have remained silent for the sake of reputation. Dottie Rambo chose truth. After years of being quietly sidelined and underpaid despite her contributions to gospel music, Dottie reached a breaking point. She began to speak publicly about the exploitative contracts, the gender bias in the Christian music world, and how many of her most beloved songs were financially benefiting others while she struggled behind the scenes. But instead of being praised for her courage, Dottie faced a new kind of isolation, one far more subtle, but equally painful. Invitations to major gospel events stopped arriving. Industry leaders who once applauded her now remained silent, or worse, actively distanced themselves. Whispers circulated that she was difficult, ungrateful, or too outspoken. For a woman in a male-dominated religious industry, speaking out against injustice was not seen as brave. It was seen as betrayal. Behind closed doors, some record executives even urged promoters not to book her. Her songs were still sung, but her name was whispered less. This silent punishment wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Dottie had poured her soul into her ministry and her music, only to find herself pushed aside for daring to challenge the system. Yet even in this painful chapter, Dottie refused to back down. She continued to write. She sang with conviction. She appeared in smaller churches and independent events where her presence was still cherished. For those who felt unseen and unheard in the industry, especially women and aging artists, Dottie's stand became a symbol of resilience. This turning point, though difficult, cemented her legacy not only as a powerful songwriter, but also as a truth teller. Her courage to speak out, even at great cost, made her not just a legend, but a voice for justice in an industry that often preferred silence. From mother and daughter to musical partners, the evolving bond of Dottie and Reba Rambo. As Dottie Rambo's legacy grew, so did the talents of her daughter, Reba Rambo. What began as a nurturing mother-daughter bond slowly blossomed into something deeper, more complex, a partnership forged through music, sacrifice, and a shared calling. In their earliest years on the road, Dottie was the matriarch and protector, guiding her young daughter through the challenges of touring, recording, and performing in the male-dominated world of gospel music. But Reba wasn't just a child tagging along. She was fiercely talented, with a voice that could both complement and challenge her mother's. By her teenage years, Reba had developed her own musical identity, one that carried Dottie's influence, but also pushed boundaries. Their performances together became more than familial. They became dynamic duets, filled with harmonies and emotional depth that audiences could feel. As Reba matured, the dynamic between them shifted. While Dottie remained the guiding force, she began to see her daughter as an equal, a creative partner with her own voice and vision. They wrote together, recorded together, and crafted music that reflected not just their spiritual beliefs, but also their evolving relationship as women navigating the same industry with different generational perspectives. Still, it wasn't always easy. The closeness of their partnership sometimes blurred the lines between family and career. Disagreements, creative tensions, and the pressures of fame tested their bond. But at the heart of it all was deep, unshakable love, a love that allowed them to weather storms and return to the music that first connected them. Their partnership became a symbol of legacy and evolution. Dottie passed on not just her voice, but her courage, her lyrical brilliance, and her unrelenting faith to Reba. And in turn, Reba honored her mother by pushing their shared legacy into new, contemporary spaces. Dottie Rambo's bold shift toward contemporary gospel. In the later years of her career, Dottie Rambo refused to remain confined by tradition, though widely revered for her timeless Southern gospel hymns. Dottie saw the world of gospel music evolving, and she felt a calling to evolve with it. With courage and conviction, she began experimenting with contemporary Christian music, blending modern sounds with her deeply spiritual lyrics. This wasn't an easy transition. Critics and conservative fans pushed back, believing that the purity of gospel was being compromised. But Dottie stood firm. For her, the message was what mattered, not the medium, collaborating with younger artists, including her daughter, Reba Rambo, and other contemporary voices. Dottie crafted songs that resonated with new generations. Her lyrics remained as soul-stirring as ever, but now carried on waves of electric guitars, synthesizers, and polished pop production. It was gospel with a fresh heartbeat. Despite resistance, Dottie's courage to step beyond the expected opened doors, not just for her own reinvention, but for countless gospel artists who came after her. She proved that faith-based music didn't have to sound old to be powerful. It just needed to be honest. With every new sound she embraced, Dottie Rambo wasn't abandoning her roots. She was expanding them. The tragic passing of Dottie Rambo. Dottie Rambo's earthly journey came to a heartbreaking end on May 11, 2008. She was on her way to a concert in Mount Vernon, Missouri, when tragedy struck. The tour bus she was traveling in ran off the road during a heavy rainstorm and crashed down an embankment. At the age of 74, the beloved gospel legend was killed instantly. The accident also left several others injured, casting a somber shadow over the Christian music world. Her death shocked and saddened fans across generations. Dottie had been more than just a songwriter. She was a spiritual mother, a trailblazer, and a resilient voice of comfort for the brokenhearted. That she died doing what she loved, traveling to minister through music, added both sorrow and a certain poetic reverence to her passing. In the days following her death, Tributes poured in from artists, pastors, and fans alike. Many spoke of how her songs had carried them through the darkest times of their lives. Her funeral, held in Nashville, was attended by hundreds who came not just to mourn, but to celebrate a life that had touched so many souls. Though she's no longer on this earth, Dottie Rambo's legacy lives on in every melody she left behind. What really caused Dottie Rambo's death, a tragedy on the highway? The tragic death of Dottie Rambo was not the result of illness, age, or natural causes. It was a devastating accident that shocked the gospel music world. On May 11, 2008, Dottie was en route to a Mother's Day concert in Mount Vernon, Missouri, when her tour bus veered off the road during a violent rainstorm. The bus skidded along Interstate 44, lost control, and slammed into an embankment, killing her instantly. Initial investigations pointed to the treacherous weather conditions as a key factor. Heavy rain had reduced visibility and created slippery surfaces, turning the long night drive into a deadly trap. Witnesses described the road as dangerous that evening, and authorities confirmed that hydroplaning was likely involved. Though the bus driver was not found to be at fault, the unforgiving combination of nature and timing proved fatal. The accident not only took Dottie's life, but also left several others injured, including members of her crew. It was a heartbreaking reminder that even those who seem divinely protected are not immune to the harsh realities of life. To many, it felt especially cruel that Dottie died while heading to do what she loved most, singing and inspiring others. The irony of losing a gospel legend on Mother's Day deepened the collective mourning. Her death was sudden, shocking, and deeply symbolic, a stark collision between earthly danger and a soul bound for glory. Dottie Rambo's lasting legacy in gospel music. Though Dottie Rambo's life was cut short by tragedy, her legacy continues to echo through generations. With over 2,500 gospel songs to her name, she didn't just write music. She wrote the soundtrack of faith, sorrow, hope, and redemption for millions. Songs like "He Looked Beyond My Fault" and "We Shall Behold Him" have become gospel standards, sung in churches, revivals, and funerals across the world. Her lyrics reached across denominational lines, uniting Christians through shared emotion and universal spiritual truth. More than just a songwriter, Dottie was a storyteller, one who bled honesty and conviction into every note. Her music wasn't polished for perfection. It was soaked in lived experience, heartbreak, and divine resilience. Many of today's gospel and country artists cite her as a core influence, including legends like Dolly Parton and Whitney Houston. She paved the way for female gospel artists, proving that women's voices not only belonged in the genre, they could lead it. Her ability to bring vulnerability and power into one harmony remains unmatched. Dottie's legacy isn't just measured in awards or record sales. It lives in every heart her music has touched, in the quiet prayer of someone lost, in the tearful worship of someone healing, in the celebration of life and eternal hope. Dottie Rambo's voice still sings the lessons Dottie Rambo left behind. Dottie Rambo's life was never paved with ease, but it was rich in meaning. From poverty and abuse in her childhood to physical suffering and industry betrayal in her adult years, Dottie's journey was one of survival through unwavering faith. Yet instead of becoming bitter, she became better. That is perhaps her greatest lesson. Pain doesn't have to define us. It can refine us. Her life reminds us that talent without humility is empty, and success without spiritual grounding is fleeting. Dottie taught that it's possible to be broken and still sing, to be cast aside and still rise, to be wounded and still heal others. Her refusal to let failure, betrayal, or even physical pain silence her voice is a beacon for anyone who's ever felt defeated. She also showed that true greatness lies in staying authentic, even when the spotlight fades. In an industry full of compromise, Dottie held firm to her values, writing songs that glorified faith over fame. And most of all, she taught us that forgiveness, both giving and receiving, isn't weakness, but the foundation of a life worth living.